I'll maybe just go through that and explain a few things for you because this is important. So if you go back to cause, it's a coexisting factor. There's different types. It can be clearly linked. It may not be clearly linked. It may be acceptable, be unacceptable. There's a variety of different types of causes or coexisting factors. Reason is different. Reason is the question, why are we doing this? Why? What is the purpose of us doing this? If I ask you, why are you praying Dhuhr? Are you going to say, oh, because the sun is in the sky? Are you understanding the difference in the type of question that I'm posing here? You could say, yeah, it's because the sun is in the, if you don't mind me leaving that area there for the sisters to sit, you can come over here, Jazakallah khair, because just so they can see a little bit, Jazakallah khair, thank you, sorry, my apologies. So when you say, why are you praying Dhuhr? You can say, yes, because the sun is in the middle of the sky, but if I ask you again, why are you praying Dhuhr? You may get, okay, maybe he's looking for a different reason here. So if you understand why they didn't really differentiate between sabab and reason for a while, because they're kind of the same, they kind of work for the same question, depending on what you're understanding from the question that's being asked. But once they started differentiating between a coexisting factor and a reason or a purpose, understanding that you can ask the same question and answer with a coexisting factor or a cause, or with a reason and purpose and still be correct, but you're answering two different questions here. You're asking two different questions. So cause is more the mechanical stuff, the stuff that are technical. This is why you're doing it. It's being that's it. For example, why is it that we don't eat laham khinzir? It's because Allah said not to. That's the sabab. That's the cause. The cause is He said not to. I don't have another reason for you. I don't have a illah. As I gave this example last week, I'm going to use it a couple of times so you understand kind of how it works. There is no illah for it. There is no illah. But there's illah for other stuff. So difference of opinion, let me quickly go on whether it's a part of sabab. Many scholars say it's a subtype of the cause or coexisting factor. I don't agree at all. I think it's very separate, and it's very important to have that separation. Actually, when you talk about a discipline of the ahdaf al-sharia, for example, or masalih al-sharia, or this is actually, this is what comes from understanding reasoning. It's understanding why, or the purpose of things, and that requires a lot of work. And you see that scholars have worked on this quite a bit for a very long time. If the reason changes, the hukum changes. That's going back to that slide that I showed you, that really, really important slide that you should keep in your brain forever. A preceding reason or objective, the hukum and the hikmah, the benefits or the positive effects. Whenever the illah is gone, the ruling ceases to exist. This goes one way, it doesn't go the opposite way. It's a one-way arrow. Once one falls, if you remove this one here, these two are fine. No problem, you can remove this one here, right? But if you remove this one here, then everything under it basically goes away. A few more examples. For prayer example, movement of time and sun is a cause. That's for prayer. If I ask you, why do you pray Dhuhr? If you're saying, well, coexisting factors or causality, it's because time moves and the sun is in the sky somewhere. So I say both because sometimes you'll be in a position where the sun isn't there at all for 6 months at certain parts of the world. It doesn't really, sun doesn't come up. You don't pray at all. Actually, some scholars actually have that argument, and we'll talk about that inshallah maybe at the end of the course. That's just something interesting to look at. They actually use it, and this is where it's coming from. Some scholars will say, no, that this is the reason. If there's no sun, there's no prayer. And if there's, and that's a whole different kind of way of looking at things altogether. But movement of time is the basic cause behind it. But the reason that you pray is connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that changes things. It's the connection. We are obligated to have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the reason. That reason never goes away. Is there any point in your life where you're not obligated to have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, then you'll never have a reason not to pray, unless there is a hukum wad'i that isn't available, unless there's a hindrance, right? If there's a hindrance, something that's holding you back, then you're held back. There's something. That's why these are different. That's why when something is fard, that's the hukum taklifi, that is the obligatory, that is the ruling that's regarding obligation or the practice of the ruling. But then you have the framework. You need the rulings that will dictate validity. So if you have something that is not, it doesn't work anymore. So examples of alcohol and sculptures. I'm going to give you these two examples to think about. So I gave you the example of lahm al-khinzir. I said the cause is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it's haram, and there's no reasoning for it. So since there's no reasoning, at no point you'll ever be able to remove that ruling. It's such for life. So when we talk about alcohol, we actually have a reasoning for it. Like the Prophet ﷺ pointed out the reasoning in multiple ahadith, and so did the Sahaba after him, and so does the word itself. And this comes back again. This is another. We'll talk about this probably towards the end of the course. Is that one of the main skill sets that you need to be a faqih, a mujtahid, and talk about usul fiqh is understanding the language. The word khamr doesn't mean alcohol. Doesn't mean booze. Khamr means anything that causes the brain to be covered, meaning puts a barrier between you and your best judgment of your brain. Al-khimar is what a lady wears to cover her head or cover. It's covering something. So khamr is a covering. And it's used to describe the covering of intellect, meaning you don't have access to it anymore, so you can't make good judgment. That's what it means. It's used to describe alcohol because alcohol does that, not because that's what alcohol is. That's why they have there's many more names for alcohol that are much more prevalent in the Arabic language, but the Quran used khamr because that's what it does. And say the khinzir doesn't have a meaning. The word, that's just the name of the animal. But here the Quran used a word that actually has a meaning to it that is relevant to the actual ruling itself. So the reasoning behind why alcohol is haram to drink is because it causes recreational intoxication. That is the reasoning. Recreational intoxication. That's the reasoning. The hukum, if it's recreational intoxication, then the ruling is haram. And then there's all these benefits that the studies will show, or maybe they won't. I honestly, one of the people where I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. People care, so I look it up and share it with them, but it doesn't matter to me. I care about the first two pieces because I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and I'm happy, I'm very happy with His judgment. So saying recreational intoxication is haram. So if you take out one of those words, so if it's no longer recreational, if it's medical intoxication, is it still haram? I don't have any evidence for that at all. I have no evidence for that at all. But what you get before you go under in surgery is exactly what you get if you were to take a large bottle of vodka and just chug it down in a setting. It's the same effect on the brain. So why is going and an anesthesiologist will count that and you're done, and then you come out speaking in different languages for a couple of. Why is that okay and this is not okay? Because this is recreational intoxication. This reason has been established by scholars as why alcohol and marijuana and other types of substances like cocaine and heroin and methamphetamines and the usage of and the same thing goes for example, morphine has a similar effect. That's not its base effect. Again, I don't want to get too technical with you medically, but it does have that effect. That's why popping morphine pills that without a reason for it is haram, but taking it when you're a cancer patient with severe pain is actually almost fard because you lose your mind from the pain if you don't do it otherwise, right? So it comes down to the reasoning. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? So reasoning is very important. This is not what causes. The cause for khamr to be haram is because Allah said it. Are you understanding the difference here? That's the cause, because the hukum in the Quran said that's what you're not supposed to eat or not supposed to drink. The reasoning behind it is understanding كل مسكر حرام. Anything ما أسكر قليله فكثيره حرام. Whatever causes, or ما أسكر كثيره فقليله حرام. Anything that causes recreational intoxication is going to be by definition haram. We have the reasoning, we'll have the ruling. It's not difficult and it's not dangerous for me to say that yes, using weed is haram, unless of course it's medical, because now we have medical intoxication. Medical intoxication requires a physician to actually prescribe it for reasons that have to do with your psyche or with your mental health or with your physical health, and that changes things. And that's why you can go have surgery and you don't have to actually bite down on a piece of wood while they chop something off, or open you up, and you understand that how difficult this was before anesthesia. Some of the stories, and I would advise you, just for the fun of it today, just read some of the medical literature on what they did beforehand. Just read what the orthopedic surgeons did back in the day. When you read it, you'll either laugh or cry, depending on what type of person you are. But before anesthesia, it was very different. But understanding that for sculptures, I'm going to give an example for sculptures. This is more of a more modern ruling, maybe in the last 100 years. And you'll find this ruling that the Azhar, the Azhar has shared, and other institutions around the Islamic world have also shared. So they talk about sculptures. Is it okay to have a sculpture, to have a figurine, is that okay? So they go back and they look at the Prophet ﷺ's hadith. There's a couple of hadith that talk about a taswir. Tasweer was not actually taking pictures because they didn't have cameras, but it was sculpting, right? And it was لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْمُصَوِّرِينَ. They are cursed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's something haram to do. So if you just take it with face value, then that is forever going to be the case. The scholars actually took us, especially the Shafi'i and the Hanabila, at least the Hanabila of the West, not the East, looked at why that's the case. Why was it haram? The reasoning they came up with was that this was because they were actually making idols. Like the sculpting that he was talking about, alayhi salatu wasalam, was the sculpting of idols at a time where people were still at risk of worshipping idols. It's when that reasoning left, meaning there was no more, people weren't, like this ummah didn't have within it people who were worshipping sculptures, meaning actual figurines of any sort, and they weren't being made with the purpose of worshipping them. That reasoning changed, so the hukum after that changed. But that requires obviously a very deep degree of knowledge to say that. Meaning it's not open for anyone to come and say, this is the reason for this ruling, and since the reason has changed, I'm going to change the ruling. For you to suggest a reason for a ruling requires a very, very deep degree of knowledge and the ability, like you have to be qualified to go ahead and suggest that. And usually it requires more than one scholar to kind of do that. But examples of that are many in the Sunnah. And a lot of examples of that exist in fiqh. And a lot of the differences, or the major differences between the schools of jurisprudence, between the madhahib on rulings, comes back to the fact that the scholar looked at a ruling and said, the reason for this, based on the 1, 2, 3 pieces of evidence, is this. And this reasoning is no longer valid, or this reasoning has changed, and thus they have a different ruling from the whole thing. And others don't agree with that, so they have a different one. And I'll give you examples of a lot of that. This is, to me, one of the most interesting pieces of understanding Usool al-Fiqh, so I will keep on kind of circulating back to it and giving you examples so you understand what it is. But I want to give you a basic one, like alcohol, where this is why we're able, because imagine, here's my question to you. Where is in the Quran, does it say, for example, that taking certain substances is haram? Does it say it? Do we have anything there? All we have is alcohol. So if we don't understand the reasoning, and we're not able to generate a illah and then attach it to a hukum, then Islam stops, right? You just don't drink alcohol, but you can do everything else. You can walk around popping pills as much as you like because there's no hukum on it. That would be the case, and that is the case for other faiths, for sure. Other faiths that didn't have the substance at the time of their prophet, they don't have a ruling for it, but some people do it. But for Muslims, no. This has always been the part of the deen. Meaning there's always been an understanding, there's always been a coexisting factor, a sabab, and there's always been a reason. Now sometimes we don't know what the reason is, and sometimes it's very clear, it's been clarified that there's no reason for this hukum. But for the majority of ahkam that we have, there are reasoning behind them. And those reasonings are what allow us to later on generate rulings for when things change and draw actual and do analogical deductions that are valid. But that's what I'm trying to explain to you, is that that's not open game. You have to be very careful with that. You shouldn't be doing that yourself. That's something you should be looking into, but you shouldn't be drawing it yourself, because that requires a lot more than just maybe a simple logical thought process. You have to understand, you have to have the totality of the evidence, you have to understand the Arabic language, you have to comprehend exactly what this evidence is saying, you have to know what other scholars have talked about over the centuries. So that's about the reason of the illah, yeah. 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 Then now they're intoxicated still, but now they have to pray. But yeah, so they don't until they're able to be focused, because they have a hindrance, right? So you're taking it medically, you're in so much pain that you can't focus. If this is again, when it becomes that complicated, you need like a case-by-case type of fatwa that's going to be offered. If someone's in so much pain that they have to be on medication that intoxicate them long-term, then we just figure out what is the least amount of that exists for them, and they pray with that least amount, and they avoid prayer when they are completely out of it. So there are different ways to have these conversations. There's different opinions even on this matter. Usually someone who is continuously on these type of medications for medical reasons is towards the end of their lives, and they're at a point where they're actually kind of in and out of consciousness. So it's not usually that clear cut, and these type of case-by-case problems need to be presented to like someone to kind of break it down for you. But for sure, you still have to keep in mind: is there a hindrance? Is there a reason? And it has to be put together by the usuli or by the faqih or the mujtahid to kind of offer the proper ruling for the person who's in that situation for sure. So let's just talk about this and I'll let you go, inshallah. Taklif, religious responsibility. This is important because we had talked about, when I defined for you ahkam, I said it's Allah's speech regarding what is due upon the religiously responsible. So that has to be defined. Who is the mukallaf here? That's very important because without understanding that, we have an issue. So there are conditions for religious responsibility. There are two things, basically. Fahiman aqilan, so it has to be able to understand and comprehend. The person has to be able to understand and comprehend. And with that, age is a part, with that, intellect is a part, IQ levels are a part. There's a number of things there that exist in order for someone to be capable of understanding and comprehending. And the second one, they have to be mu'ahhalan, meaning they have to have legal capacity. They have to have legal capacity. There are two types of legal capacity in Islam. The first one is we call ahliyat wujub, the other one we call ahliyat ada. Ahliyat wujub means they have receptive legal capacity. Meaning you have to be a human who is capable of receiving da'wah. You have to be someone, you have to be a human being. If we run into some other intellectual being, that doesn't matter. They have to be human, they have to be capable of receiving the da'wah. If they can't receive it, then they can't be intellectually responsible. Meaning, or religiously responsible. If you run into a human being who doesn't speak any of the modern languages that exist here today, and you don't at that moment have a way to actually communicate with them, then until you can communicate with them effectively, they're not mukallaf. Because they don't have ahliyat wujub. They don't have the receptive. They can't receive the da'wah yet. And the example that is very known, this is like an example you'll find in all the books of Usool, that if a person is living on a mountain and the Prophet is down in the valley and he doesn't end up going down to the valley and no one comes up to talk to him, he's not mukallaf. He didn't receive the da'wah. You're not held. The fitrah is important for sure, having fitrah and understanding that there's a part of you that knows la ilaha illallah, but it's not enough for you to be legally responsible. In order for you to be legally responsible, you have to have a fitrah, and you have to have someone who offers you the da'wah. Both of them have to come together in order for you to be for you to have ahliyat wujub, or for you to be legally responsible, or religiously responsible. So the fitrah is there, everyone has it. Sometimes the fitrah is messed up a little bit based on certain factors that are happening within your life, but alone the fitrah is never okay. Now, if you attended my Aqeedah course, you'll know that the Maturidiyya don't agree with that specifically, but the majority of scholars of Aqeedah do, like the Ash'a'ira and the Salafis, they're okay with that. But the Maturidiyya feel that fitrah is enough. That's why they don't fully agree with what I'm saying here, but they're a very small group. Like even from the group today of Maturidiyya, most of them have kind of changed that opinion, and they just have a small group that still hold on to that. So you have to have ahliyat wujub. And ahliyat ada is active legal capacity. So just to make this simple, with a simple example so you understand. So you have the ability to make your own choices. You have to have the ability to make your own choices. Meaning, you heard the salah is fard. That's ahliyat wujub, right? You heard salah is fard. You were able, and you were in a position where you received that piece of information. So that's the receptive legal capacity. You heard salah is fard. Are you able to practice salah? That's ahliyat ada. So you say, well, how could that be? You could be persecuted in a position where you don't have your own freedom, or you don't have the ability to actually step away and pray, or you don't have the ability to, there's something holding you back from praying. For example, there's a hindrance. There's a hindrance so you can't pray. So in order for you to be legally responsible, you have to be fahim aqil, you have to be someone who's able to comprehend and understand, so that age and intellect comes into that, and you have to have legal capacity. You have to be able to receive the da'wah, and you have to be able to actually practice what you learned. And there are certain things that come into that. This is a nice little summary of a topic that will have maybe 15 to 16 different points that I can count for each, like in terms of all the different conditions. But this is to make it really simple. It summarizes the whole thing. You can come up with maybe little caveats of, okay, you would require this, or then you would require that for this to be applicable. But that's what we talk about in terms of religious responsibility. Not everyone in that, putting it that way, is religiously responsible, right? If you think about it, not everyone is. There are many people living in the world that may not be religiously responsible. They don't have the ability to comprehend, they don't have the intellect, they don't have the receptive capacity, they don't have the capacity, or they don't have the capacity to actually practice what they're being taught altogether, for different reasons. That the reasons, there are many reasons, I'm not going to go through them, but you can probably imagine yourself of different reasons that can cause this, inshallah. So we'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue with that next week. We'll go through some of, well, we haven't gone too far, but this first part of the message is much more comprehensive than the last piece of the matan. Like every matan, the beginning is always content heavy, and the last piece is a little bit less heavy. So we'll take a little bit of time for the first couple of paragraphs to get through them because they carry the most information, and then the rest of it may be a little bit quicker as we go along. But we will get through the full matan inshallah ta'ala this semester. Subhanallah bihamdihi wa la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.